Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. This is following Lynn's advice. I got this plant, Sarcochilus Fitzgeraldii, from the Spices Attic at Wisley. So that was back on a week ago, Friday. Lynn also bought one, and when she got hers home, not long after, she took it out of the pot and found that there weren't very good roots. So she repotted hers in a much smaller media and in a smaller pot. And as far as I know, she said she was going to take the flower spikes off to try and bring it back into vegetative growth, which should produce new roots. So I may follow along those lines, but what I really want to do is first of all get it out of the pot and see what we've got. It is remotely possible that this was stuck in a pot with new bark around the edges, and the old media and the old part of the plant is still in the middle of the pot. But until I get it out, I won't know, will I? So let's see if it will come out. I'm a little worried that these nice roots round here are actually stuck to the pot. I'm pretty sure they are. Oh no, they might be just touching it. Well, one way to find out. Let's take it out and see what happens. Yeah, I see what she means. There's an awful lot of dead roots here in the middle of the pot. And quite honestly, I think that bark is too big. You have to bear in mind these are cooler growers. They come from river ravines, so they tend to be in places that are quite wet. Yeah, so although these roots are dark brown, these are dead, but these aren't. So we do have some dead roots, which I'm going to trim off. We also have a plant here that is starting to desiccate, and the reason is probably because it's not getting hydrated. However, from the base of the plant are lots of nice new plantlets. So the plant is self-propagating by plantlets, and that part of it is working quite well. And underneath those plantlets are some quite good roots. So that part of the plant's working well. What isn't working well is the older part of the plant, which is not hydrating very well. The chances are that's simply because the older part of the plant has lost its roots. So I'm going to hope that the older part of the plant doesn't drain the resources on all these little plantlets. I doubt if it will. But yes, it could certainly do with going in a smaller pot. So where's my skizzers? Let's do the roots first. So dead roots there. There. So that root goes all over the place, but it will eventually come off. It's actually stuck to another root, which is what's holding it in there. That's got it. That's a dead root, that's an extension of an existing root that's died. So take that off, and that. These are all the older roots in the centre of the plant, which is often the case with all types of orchids, not just this. Now, although that really long root appears to be alive, if I'm going to get this in a smaller pot, it might have to come off anyway. In fact, I'll take it off now. We'll take it back to that joint that looks as though it's broken. But I can't actually tell. I don't think this root system generally branches. I don't see many branches. I tend to see long twisty roots that haven't branched. So you have to go careful. If you've got a non-branching root system, you've got to go careful what you trim, because if you take a growing root tip off, that root won't grow anymore because it's not a branching type, and this certainly doesn't. There are no obvious branches anywhere, so maybe it's not a branching type. It's unusual, most orchid roots branch, but not all. Right, so now am I going to be able to get that into a smaller pot? See, these big pieces, they're attached to roots that are good roots, and I don't want to break them off because they will tear the velamen, and then that part of the velamen may well rot that root completely, so it's better to leave a few on. Ooh, missed that one. I think that will do. Now what we've got to do is decide what we're going to do about this desiccation. Where's my camera? Let's get a bit closer. You can see we've got a leaf here tucked underneath here that's completely desiccated, and if you look at the nice shiny leaf and then look at the texture of these lower leaves are desiccated. They're not getting hydrated. Now older parts of the plant would drop their oldest leaves. You could think of these as growing like Vandaceous orchids, yeah? So monopodial, propagation via plantlets lower down the stem, and it's actually a good cluster at the base here, because I mean there's lots of new plantlets coming here. Let's see if I can get in a bit closer. Look, it's one here, one here, one here. This one's pushing on. Coming around this side, another one down there, another one here, plus the little ones that are already pushing on, plus this one that's growing on quite nicely. So what I've got to do now is Lynn decided that she was going to take the flower spikes off to encourage it to grow more roots. I'm not quite so fussed on the grounds that this isn't a bad root system, even though there were some dead ones. And given the cluster of plants at the base that have got good roots, even if this main plant doesn't do so well, these will. These have good roots. This plant had the older part of the system, root system. So I think what I'm going to do is, there's a very large spike on this one. I'm going to take that one off. So we'll take that one off. I can hear you shriek in horror. This little plant down here would be better off putting its energy into growing a bigger plant, so I'm also going to take that one off. That leaves that little one, and we'll just let that one go. It would be nice to see the blooms, wouldn't it? So we'll let one spike remain and see if the plant can support it. It might mean that it doesn't flower as well as it should. Right, this is lovely big bark. If I knew how old it was, I'd probably dry that off and reuse it, but I don't know where it's been or what it's been up to, so I won't. With my large chunky bark that I use for crocking, I reuse it because I know where it's been. So there we go, that's the plant. Not as bad as I was expecting. As I said, if you get a group of plants that you buy in from somewhere to sell on, you might have a couple of good ones in amongst them, and some that aren't quite so good, and some that are quite poor. You never quite know what you're going to get. But I looked at this one and thought, well, hang on, with all these new plantlets coming, they're liable to grow on reasonably strong, providing they're in the right environment. Now these are lithophytes. In the main, they are found on rocky outcrops, in ravines, river ravines. So in moist, shady places, growing on rocks, in crevices and things like that. Not up in the trees like a lot of our epiphytes. So that will dictate a little bit to what I'm going to use for media. Right, so I'll have a clear up and we'll come back when I've found a pot that I can cram this into and some suitable media. So I'll be back. Okay, I'm going to get this. I've already tried it. It will go in there. This is one of my new pots that I managed to acquire, which is wide and shallow. These tend to be shallow rooted and don't like their root tips down in deep pots that stay wet too long. Yeah, if you think about something that grows on rocks, yeah, it's whenever it gets wet, whenever it rains or anything like that, it's going to dry quite quickly, isn't it? You know, so I would say it's important for a quick wet dry cycle. So I've got small bark, that's following Lynn's advice, and being a lithophyte, I'm going to add some stones. Now, these are grow stones, which are, well, you can't really get the genuine article anymore because it's made from recycled glass. Don't ask me how, I don't need to know. It's full of holes, it's very, very porous, neutral pH, being glass. And so it holds some water, it also holds some air. And I've got a feeling that roots might appreciate some rocky substance. Can they tell? Well, if you think about it, if it comes from river ravines, East Coast Australia, semi-tropical probably, there's probably quite a lot of trees and undergrowth around, and yet it chooses to grow on the rocks. So perhaps it does know. And when germination is taking place, it germinates in the place it's going to do best. And where it isn't going to do very well, the plants don't survive. Yeah? So no, they don't know in as much as they think, but maybe the germination process sets them on the right track. I don't know. But anyway, that's what it's going in. And it's going in a very small pot, and it's going to have to be teased into that small pot because some of these roots don't really fit. And as I've said, it's doesn't appear to be a branching root system, which obviously means if a root breaks, it doesn't stop functioning because the break is the velamen. If the root inside stays intact, it's still functioning. It's at least functioning from the break upwards towards the plant, even if it isn't lower down. So I'm going to set this in the pot like that, and then we will try and fill up the gaps. When I've got a lot of gaps to fill up, I start tapping early on in the process, long before the pot's full. If you fill it up first and then start tapping, you're liable to leave gaps. Now this is you're going to have to go very careful with the watering on this, because if I've got parts of the plant desiccating, then it's through lack of hydration. I doubt if it's going to be because it's too warm. I mean, this is a relatively temperature tolerant, although it doesn't tend to be found too high up. But you know, it's not a steamy jungle type grower. It can grow quite cool. Right. How are we doing then? Still see some roots, not too fussed. Don't mind a little bit of an air gap here and there. However, that's quite a big air gap. We'll try and just tuck some media down in there. Gotcha. Really fill the gap. How's that then? Base of those plantlets sat on the media. Roots okay. In the pot, in the main. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Right, so we will give that a good soak. Do you know, I really want to remove that desiccated leaf. In fact, I'm going to. It's serving no purpose now, it's shriveled too far. So we will remove that, make the plant look a bit nicer. Just take that one off. The next one up is relatively desiccated, but not shriveled like this one. Excuse the mess. My burn, I knocked it this morning when I was doing the washing up. And it bled, so I've actually knocked the surface off. And being a burn, obviously the wound doesn't heal up very quickly because all the tissues and cells are damaged being a burn. So it doesn't want to heal at the moment. It will do eventually. Right, let's hope enough of those roots are connected to this part of the plant. If not, this part of the plant will eventually fail. But it's a matter now of keeping on top of the watering and making sure it doesn't stay dry for any length of time. These plantlets are all in active growth, and so is this. If you look at the tip of the plant, yeah, it's in active growth. So we need to keep it hydrated now. I'm not sure about feeding these, but I would suggest, like all orchids, if it's in active growth, it wants some food. What I meant was, I don't know if it's a high feeder or not. You know, like I feed at relatively high levels for my Phalaenopsis. I feed at incredibly low levels for my Masdevallias, Disas and all those sorts. So various levels of feed, and I don't know where this one sits at the moment, but it is in active growth, so it needs some food. And as I said, we've left one spike on, and that's on the older part of the plant. The new parts of the plant now can concentrate on growing and producing more new roots. So this part of the plant, the cluster, should grow on well during this growing season. This plant should extend. Whether it can grow some new roots or not, I don't know, as it's a more mature extension of the plant base. We shall see. So there we go. I'm going to do a new label for it because that one's faded and you can't read it anyway. So we will do a new label for it. I've started a new section in my notes as it's the first one. And as I said in a previous video when we first had a look at this when I got it, the chances are I'll be getting some more of these, but I'll be after some of the flashier hybrids. You know, some of the reds and the yellows and the deeper pinks and things like that. Blooms on this tend to be white with some central speckles, purpley colour I believe, purpley red. And they're in the centre, but the majority of the bloom is white. So not very colourful. But we shall see. Hopefully we will get some. Hopefully that spike will push on and produce a few blooms. Even if it's only a few, just so that we can see it. So there we go, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.